Hey everyone! So this video is intended for some of the aides who come to my class and work with some of my super sweet kids that need a little bit more assistance. Perhaps they can't do some of the other projects that the rest of the class is doing, so we come up with some alternative things that they can do. And this is a fun little project. It is called a drop pot, at least I call it a drop pot, where we take a piece of clay and we drop it, and then we cut a lid, and then we hollow it out. So I'm going to show this now. As far as finishing, we can certainly finish them with glaze, we can finish them with oxide, but the most important thing to remember is when you're finishing, you can't have any glaze or oxide or anything that will fuse it together on the edges where they are going to meet. Just like any sort of lidded pot, you can't have anything that's going to touch. So hopefully my aides will enjoy this and can work with the kids. Other people might enjoy it too. This is a nice project. I used to do this with like my elementary third graders, and they really enjoyed it quite a bit too. So drop me any questions below if you have any questions. So for making a drop pot, you don't need too much clay. Like I wouldn't do any more than the size of a fist, and you can certainly do smaller than that. I am going to wedge up a little bit of clay, and from this clay I'm going to make maybe 3 or 4 drop pots. So this is scrap clay, and I'm wedging it because I've combined scrap clay together, and I want to have a nice cohesive moisture to it. If you have thinner or if you have drier spots or wetter spots, it will help mix it together a little bit more cohesively. So again, I'm using some hunks of clay, probably a little bit smaller than a fist. I'll make some of different sizes here. And again, I just want to show you maybe 4 different examples of how you can do a drop pot. Now, the whole idea on the drop pot is we want to smooth the surface. So if you have an area maybe where you have a seam, just take a few minutes. I make a ball first, and I'm definitely smoothing the surface because I don't want to have any seams that are visible where the clay is kind of blending together there. It should look pretty clean. So if you are helping a small child with this or a child that needs some assistance, you want to do this part for them so it's nice and clean before they begin. So I did that with this one, and I'm going to go ahead and do it for the other couple. I should mention I'm not using water when I smooth this. I'm just taking my fingers and smearing over the surface. Now if your clay is dry and cracking, you might just want fresh clay. We can pug anything that's dry and cracking, but this will smooth over fine without water. I don't want to add water to this at this point because what I'm going to do next, the water could cause some problems and it could stick. So I want to show you a few different options of how I can texture this. Now these could be done entirely without texture, but I'm going to show you how to texture these in a couple different manners. But first I'm going to make this into the actual drop pot, and I just drop it by a few inches, so maybe 6 or 8 inches. I'm just dropping it, and I can create an irregular kind of a fun form, and this is going to be a lidded box. So I want it to be something where it's stable and it's not going to fall over. Okay, I kind of like that one. I think I like this little form. Okay, and I'll go ahead and do that for the others. All right, so all of my forms have been dropped to create kind of a little bit of a wonky form that's got a slightly organic feel to it with some facets. Now, I want to show you different ways that you can texture. One would be a simple one that a kid could do. Again, your clay should not be wet when you're doing this. And I have a texture mat. I have many texture mats in my classroom. But if you have the child take it and then just drop it right onto the texture mat, it can create some really awesome, beautiful textures. This is easy enough that kids who don't even like to touch clay can handle this. There we go. And I've got one. Okay. For the second kind of texturing, I would like to show how you could use a stamp. So in my classroom, we have made lots of different stamps, and the kids can use these if they want to use the stamps that they've made, or if they want to use stamps that have been left by others, they could use them. So I'm just going to take this stamp and stamp the surface. So again, this is something simple that kids who might not even care to touch clay can often manage this. And they don't have to do it, but stamping the bottom is also fun sometimes. Okay, so this stamped one, now I will set this aside as well. For the next one, if they would want to use rollers, I have a variety of rollers. I have some that are rubber or silicone, some that are made of wood, so they can use. The rollers are probably a little trickier to use, but with the help of an adult, if the child has difficulty, that can be done. There we go. So that one it's a roller. Okay, and the fourth way that I wanted to show is just texturing just by pressing a simple tool into it. This is just one of those Kemper tools that has like the little rounded end, and all I want to do is I'm just going to kind of rock this in. I'm not really removing clay, I'm just kind of pushing it in to make a nice little texture. This again is something that a lot of kids can do just by kind of just gently rocking it in. It creates a nice little texture. Now, of course, if the kids do want to carve a texture into it, that is fine, but the carving should be done when it's leather hard. I usually tell kids don't carve when something is plastic because it's much harder to clean it when it's plastic. So I'll leave a couple of sides on this that can be carved. So I won't do the exact same texture over the whole thing. I'll do different sides with different textures. All right, so this is all I'm going to do on this until it gets leather hard. Now, my goal is to get these leather hard. If you are in my classroom, I have damp boxes where things can be put in a damp box with the lid propped, and that will become leather hard. If you are in a situation where you don't have a damp box, sometimes if you put it in a cabinet, like we have a damp cabinet, I can leave those in there uncovered for a night and then they would get leather hard. If you don't have a damp cabinet, if you're just putting it out in a room, you might want to say take a towel and place over it for one night and then it would become leather hard. Or if it's going to be a few days, maybe you would want to put a bag over it, over the board, so it can become leather hard. But whatever way works best, you just want to set those aside and let them become leather hard. Now my drop pots are leather hard. I'm going to finish this one. I was going to add a carved design to it, and here I'm just using the mini ribbon tool, which creates a really nice clean texture that requires very little, if any, cleaning, because it's cutting and removing rather than just pushing. If you push the clay, like a needle tool leaves a very messy line that requires a lot of cleaning. I would recommend carving it away instead of pushing it. All right, now with all of the drop pots leather hard, now I want to trim away the top. Now I can use just a cutoff wire, and I could take it, so like this, I could take it and I could kind of drag it, and then I kind of wiggle it because I want to have kind of a curved edge to it. If I curve an edge, then it will lock in place. The cutoff wire is great, but if you wanted to use, I do have one of these in my room. This is a bow tool, which also is handy because you can do it with one hand rather than two. So use whichever one you like. This, by the way, this is a Mud Tools bow tool. It's made by Cheryl Mud Tools. I really like their quality tools. I think they're out of North Carolina. I'll do another one here. But again, if you wiggle that wire and kind of make it go up and down so it's just not flat, it actually will create a lock, and it will lock the lid in place so it just doesn't fall off. Now, once you have it cut apart, then the trick comes with hollowing this out. Now we want to hollow it without damaging the form, and for that I'm using one of these loop tools. I want to try to make the walls somewhat uniform in thickness, but I don't want to go through. So you have to be aware of how thick are your walls, and just be careful not to pierce through. Okay, now I'm going to put that back on, make sure that I haven't skewed it very much. Okay, now I'll take it back off. And the bottom part is a lot thicker because I just made the top kind of narrow. So here, I'm just going to dig it away. The loop tool is nice because as you cut, that loop of the ribbon tool just goes right through and it cuts it away, and then when you pull it out, that's a loose piece. Now this particular part, this will probably require adult help if you're working with children who can't quite, if they don't have good fine motor skills. And again, my goal is to try to have the wall an even thickness all the way around. And then I put that together again, and I make sure that it is fitting. And then there we go. That inside looks pretty good. I'm going to do that for the others. And again, after I hollow it, I put it together to make sure that the walls are matching and I haven't bent it. As long as you're not wetting the upper edge, it should not get stuck. It should easily be fine. We will fire the lids on. That way, if they shrink, the lid will shrink with the pot. It should shrink evenly, I mean, and it will shrink for sure. We just want them to shrink together. There we go. And last one. Now, if I want to smooth out the insides even more, I can wait until it's a little bit drier, and then I can just take a paintbrush and water and go over the inside. I don't want to do that right now though, because mine is still on the leather hard side, maybe the soft side of leather hard, and I don't want to end up by getting it a lot wetter.